Hello guys, good evening. Welcome to a new session with Kodri. So we're gonna do a bit of coding today. I can see many friends connected here. So first of all, thank you to Pusher for helping us with the streaming of the coding event. We also got some students from Kodri and also some special guests, people like Giacomo and Bavik and all this sort of people that you already know, right? So if it's your first time here, welcome. We essentially run an online platform where you can practice with your coding skills for free. Yeah. So I would like to show you a bit of the platform before we start with the actual activity. So what you can see at the moment is the dashboard. So that's the homepage of Kodri. Here we present you a bunch of options. So you have to select between a range of languages, technologies, frameworks, libraries, and so on, right? And then the idea is once you pick your favorite language and the difficulty level from beginner to expert, you can play with some modules. Yeah. So for instance, talking about just to warm up a bit, so if I got JavaScript and lower beginner, let's play a bit with the strings just to get a feeling about the user interface and how everything works, right? So what you get is 5 questions about this particular topic. I have selected JavaScript strings, so let's play with JavaScript strings. Question now, number 1 out of 5, get the welcome message. You see on the left-hand side, we present you a problem. You have to deal with some algorithms. If that sounds like Chinese and you are not Chinese, then you get a video to YouTube where we'll help you a bit to deal with the problem. And then eventually we got the assertion, we got the test itself, right? So in this particular case, trying to translate the problem into a human language, the problem is, A, please create a new function in JavaScript called getWelcomeMessage. So whenever you call that function, you should return welcome to JavaScript. Interestingly enough, because that's a beginner question, on the right-hand side, the code is mostly written for you already. Yeah, this is for beginners, clearly. But then we need to complete the problem by selecting the right option. So for instance, in this particular case, I got 2 options, JavaScript and JavaScript with exclamation mark. If we pay attention to detail, we'll notice that in reality, the message that we need to display to our users should be welcome to JavaScript with the exclamation mark. In other words, option B is the correct one. If by accident or because of whatever reason I pick the wrong option, you see the test becomes red. If I select the right option, it becomes green, confetti time, blah, blah, blah. And that means that we can submit the exercise and then deal with the second question. I'm going to skip the next questions. This just give you an overview about how the platform works. Let me show you what happened at the end. At the end of the exercise, we give you a score telling you how good your performance was according to a bunch of metrics that I will actually explain in detail later on. Yeah. For now, this is an intro about the platform. You can play by yourself. You can run pair programming sessions with other developers, and you can also play coding challenges. And that's what I would like to do today. So once you join the platform, which is completely free, you don't even have to create an account. So now you can play as a guest. You'll notice on the left-hand side of the menu that you got an option called challenges. If you click on the option, you will find out a list of exercises that we'd like to do with you today. There are essentially 2 tracks, one for JavaScript and one for React. Yeah, so it's up to you. You can join one track, you can join multiple tracks. That's up to you. You got 60 minutes, 1 hour, so do whatever you want, right? Obviously, depending on the difficulty level, you'll have to face different type of questions. So lower beginner, that's going to be a quiz game. Option A, B, C, D, easy peasy. Upper beginner, you'll have to do a bit of coding, and upper intermediate, you'll have to do quite a lot of coding. Yeah, and the same rule applies to both JavaScript and React. So that's up to you guys. Just feel free to select one track, and then feel free to keep moving between tracks. Yeah. So today, I would like to run some of these exercises. So I'm not going to participate in the challenge. I'm not going to essentially compare my performance against anybody else. However, I would like to solve some of the questions that you are facing with the help of our collaborators. Yeah. So challenges are open. So you got 60 minutes to play with them. At the end of the session, I would like to invite you all to attend this stream again, because we are going to present the results. So once you select your track, yeah, I'm going to start with JavaScript upper intermediate, yeah, because of no particular reason. So once you click on it, you'll have to select a team. Yeah. So we at Kodri encourage the social aspect of coding. So we believe that the best way of coding is as a group. Yeah. So even if you play the challenge individually, you'll be assigned to a team. It doesn't really matter which team it depends on whether you prefer sharks or octopus. So that's completely up to you. The thing is, at the end of this exercise, we will compare the performance of each team. Yeah. So that's pretty much the idea of this exercise. So first things first, let me select a random team, JavaScript, upper beginner, and then let's start the challenge. So now you got two options. Either you play the challenge by yourself, which is always a very healthy activity, or you just watch the way we deal with the different questions, right? So let's have a look to the first question on the upper beginner. So first of all, in here, we got a problem. We want to check if I am old. Yeah, I have a function in JavaScript called am I old that receives an argument. Yeah, that number is the argument. It's a number. Yeah, I'm 34 years old. I'm 103 years old. I'm whatever. Yeah, and the idea, in mind that you are creating a mobile app. So the idea is to tell your customers whether they are old or young. Yeah, the question that maybe is a bit creepy. So let's ignore the semantics a bit of the exercise. Let's try just to find out how to solve it. Yeah, from a mathematical point of view. All right. So can any one of our collaborators tell me what sort of pattern or technique are we introducing here to decide if our customer is young or old?
Ternary operator.
Ternary operator, correct. Yeah, you see, so I got the age argument, and then I say if the age is less than 100 years old, then according to what we got here on the right-hand side, then yes, you are old. Else, look at the syntax. Question marks implies if the condition is truthy, then return that message. Else returns the different message. Yeah, and that's what we got so far. However, if I test that, if I click on the test button, that's not gonna work probably. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So now we need to figure out why this code doesn't work, right? So it looks like the condition is on the other way around, right? If I'm less than 100 years old, then I'm old. If I'm 300 years old, if that makes any sense, I'm not old at all. That's not correct, right? So we have to probably change the condition instead of less than, greater than. Yeah. Age greater than 100 years old. And then, guys, remember, coding is about paying attention to detail. And if you pay attention according to the appetite of the exercise, if you are not old enough, we should display no with exclamation mark. Yeah, so let's be careful with these details. And now I got a question for you. Is that gonna work or not?
It will work, yeah, but we also need a semicolon at the end of.
Okay, fair enough. One thing at a time, guys. So first of all, let's run it and let's see if you get some confetti time. If we get confetti time, we'll think about how to optimize it. Yeah. So if we test it, here we go. You got confetti time, and now our friend Max said that hey, we need to add a semicolon. That's correct. Yeah. So in JavaScript these days, it is based on many coding style guides, it is a recommended practice to finish your statements with a semicolon. Not mandatory anymore. Semicolons used to be mandatory in the 90s, yeah. But before I feel too old, I'm gonna ignore that, and I'm gonna say that these days they are optional. However, still recommended. Yeah, recommended by who, by the way? Who decides these guidelines? Can anyone tell me an important actor in the JavaScript industry defining the styling standards? Airbnb, that's correct. Yeah, Airbnb, you know, when you want to go on holidays to Ibiza to get drunk, well, probably not now, but you get the point, right? And you want to rent a room somewhere in Ibiza or anywhere else, you go to Airbnb. So these guys, apart from, you know, renting rooms, they do a lot of efforts in the JavaScript and in the React community. And one of these efforts goes towards defining what they believe is the best way of coding with JavaScript. And they say that when you complete a sentence, you should add a semicolon. And that's pretty much it. Is there any final thoughts, guys? Any comments about this exercise?
We can improve by moving the yes below and the no below. Just
okay. So Vicky is asking us to move things around for readability purposes.
We will have larger sentences. Just
fair enough. Yeah, from a scalability point of view, that may work a bit better. Yeah, not against that. I'm curious to see what people like Giacomo, Babik, they think. Do you have, guys, any comments about this algorithm? Well, I'll take that as a no.
Okay, I will just keep it on one line when it is not too big. I will just focus on solving another thing. I didn't, maybe you already told it. I will also warn people not to concatenate too many ternary operators. Otherwise, it's hard to read. So it's a nice tool, but don't abuse it.
Absolutely, I completely agree with Giacomo. So the ternary operator is great for simplistic use case scenarios, right? If else, maybe if else. But if you got a complex scenario, imagine that we need to map how Brexit works, guys. Yeah, you see, if else. So the ternary operator is not going to solve that problem. Yeah, probably nothing is going to solve the problem, but for sure the ternary operator, not at all, right? So we need to be careful. We need to be careful with the ternary operator because it's sexy but dangerous. All right, so let's leave it here and then let's jump to question number 2. That's an interesting one. So look, you got a function called display player in capitals. That function receives a string as the argument, right? Which is a tennis player. And the idea is to return a list, an array of all the individual characters associated to that string. There are obviously many ways we can solve the problem. However, the exercise, it's a bit opinionated about the technique that we should use. Look, using the for-of loop structure. So for-of is one of these methods that belong to what we call modern JavaScript that simplifies the process of dealing with some sort of data iteration. Yeah. So let's have a look to how for-of works. So first of all, let's talk about the argument. Can you guys tell me a decent argument name for this problem?
Tennis player.
Tennis player.
Tennis player. Can I call it just player for now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, tennis player. Yeah, of course, tennis player is absolutely great. Yeah? You don't call it football player, right? Semantics, guys. Semantics makes the difference between a good developer and a great one. All right, so let's keep it simple. Let's call it player, and then probably, I mean, if the exercise was not opinionated, I'm sure we will probably find a smarter way of dealing, maybe using a split map for each. I don't know. But the thing is, because the exercise is inviting you, Miss or Mr. Developer, to use for-of, then let's just do it, right? So I'm going to do something. I'm going to create a variable called result. Eventually, before I forget, I'm going to return it. Yeah, you know, it happens often. You do a very cool algorithm, but you completely forget to return something, and nothing works, obviously. So, you know, I'm preparing the structure of my algorithm, and now I'm going to use for-of. So the idea with for-of is we can iterate over a variable, accessing each individual element on that variable. For-of works with what we call, guys, enumerable variables. Yeah? So what is an enumerable variable? An enumerable, oh, come on, I can do it. Enumerable variable is a type of variable that you can enumerate. Yeah, you can say, okay, this is the first element of the variable, that's the second, that's the third, that's the fourth. Yeah. So for instance, an array. Is an array enumerable, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, because you can get the first element of the array, you can get the second, you can get the last. Yeah, you can actually build a queue of elements somehow. It's an object enumerable?
No.
No, it's not.
That's correct. It's not, because you cannot enumerate. You can iterate, you can get all the keys, but you cannot guarantee the order of the keys. So we should be careful because objects are not enumerable in JavaScript. However, now the tricky question is, are strings enumerable in JavaScript? Can I get the first element of a string?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Of course, you can. Correct. Yeah. If I got a string called let character equals Donald, Guys, can I do character of 0? Can I do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Of course,
yes.
right? So I can enumerate all the properties, all the elements associated to that variable. In other words, yes, we can use for of, right? Other ways that question wouldn't make any sense, but that's a different story. All right, so I'm going to do something. I'm going to create a variable. Let me call it let. We'll see the name of the variable. You know, I'm sometimes a bit picky with the variable names. Let me call it X for now, even though I'm sure I'll change my mind later on. Let X of player. Yeah. So X points to each individual character of the player. And now, guys, what happens if I wanna add each individual character to the result? How can you add an element to an array, guys, in JavaScript?
To push it.
A push, correct. Something like that. And now you tell me, is that gonna work?
No, not considered
No,
uppercase.
No.
Why not?
because we have to push. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say we have to add 2 uppercase because we want it.
That's correct, Lauren. That's correct. Look, guys, the exercise is expecting you to transform each individual character to big one, yeah? So to uppercase. To uppercase. And now what? Is it going to work? Should we try it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So now you see it works, right? However, it is important to look after the semantics. So X, I think X is a horrible variable name because it tells nothing about the algorithm you are building, right? Can we call it, for instance, char, something like that?
Yeah.
Or
That's an
letter.
individual character, yeah? I think that will work a bit better. And then it works. Any final thoughts about this problem? No?
Yeah.
I got a question for Giacomo, you're around. How popular for off is? Are you using it often or not at all?
Say that
sure.
again, the audio was flickering.
No, yeah, sorry. I was asking if you're a big fan of using for off or do you prefer other sort of alternatives?
Usually I tend to, where I work, we tend to embrace with my team more of a style of a functional programming. So we iterate using map, reduce, this kind of stuff. It's a nice tool. It just confuses me all the time because for in Python is different from when you iterate an object. For in JavaScript and so on. I always hit my big nose there, but maybe that is also another reason for which I bought it.
Yeah, cool.
And as you mentioned, can be a bit tricky with enumerable or not, according to how you declare as the variable.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to suggest too much to follow the crowd but blindly. But usually, if you just use a more functional approach when you need to iterate through, you rarely go wrong.
Yeah. I completely agree with you.
Under the hood, they work more or less the same. So.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Giacomo. Actually, guys, let's do something. So Giacomo says that because he prefers, I agree with Giacomo essentially, so he prefers a more functional coding style. So can anyone apart from Giacomo obviously tell me how would you solve the problem? I'm going to break the instructions a bit, right? I'm going to ignore the instruction. I'm a bit borderline this evening. So I want to solve the problem using a different technique. So what would you propose?
With the dot split method.
Dot split, interesting. So we can do return player dot split. What else, Vicky?
And then inside we can just with quotes.
Quotes, yes, single quotes. All right. What else?
And then dot map.
Dot map, fantastic. What else?
For each player.
For each player.
Yeah.
Like that.
We can return player dot to uppercase.
That's very interesting, Vicky. All right. So first things first. Is this gonna work or not?
I think that the split has because it doesn't have a space. I think.
Is it more of an issue with the wording because we've already accessed the player?
Wording. All right, but is this wording issue gonna affect the eventual result or not?
No.
I think it will.
That's interesting. There is some controversial, guys. Let's figure out. That should work. First things first. That should work. See, that works. However, if Vicky was applying the job interview, she will have problems because naming conventions are controversial. Yeah. So look, player whichever the player is, right? The name, full name, last name, whatever, fine. But then, can you tell me, Vicky, what's the first value of the player argument as part of the map function? In this case, R, correct.
Yeah, I can return just the. Yeah, I can return just the R.
Which is correct. The content is right, but the semantics are highly confusing. Because if I read that code, I will get the feeling that player is the name of the player, and that's not true.
Can say letter maybe, or first
letter. We can first letter. Guys, what do you think about first letter?
No, it's fine.
That's still wrong, right? That's still wrong. I mean, you can call it letter or char or something like that, yeah? And then, you know, semantics get a bit better. Of course, you can break things.
Ricardo, in an interview, I will also ask Vicky if she can turn it into an array without using split. That will be my first question. I will proceed gradually. So I will go to your point as well, but proceeding from left to right. That will be my first question. Well, if you can turn into an array without using a for loop, we already seen that.
That's a great question. Guys, let's do some homework tonight, right? I'm not going to do that now because I want to move on. But Giacomo is asking something which is great, right? So guys, you know, Giacomo, if you apply to somewhere and Giacomo is working for the company, he will ask you, how will you transform this string into an array without using splits?
Well, depends. If you're applying some place working and then getting a fee, if you get hired, I will ask you much simple stuff. But otherwise, fear me.
Okay, cool. Good stuff, guys.
With the reduce methods.
Don't spoil. So guys, just think about it, and once you got an answer tomorrow or after tomorrow, just let me know, right? You'll get a bonus, of course, if you get the answer right. All right. Okay. So guys, I think we've spent 20 minutes on beginner, so probably it's time to do something a bit more spicy, yeah, if you agree with me. So I'm gonna leave that challenge. And I would like to, before I spoil the results, sorry about that, guys. Oh, cool, there's a lot of people. All right. So I would like to play with JavaScript upper intermediate, yeah? So questions will get a bit more complicated, of course. So let me have a look what we got today here. So question number 1, get the average pixels. So that question is actually trickier than it looks, right? So look at what the problem is. We have an object as the argument, yeah? That object is a collection of key value pairs, and that object represents a bunch of CSS properties, yeah? You know, whatever color, padding, you know, CSS. Eventually, the goal of the algorithm is give me the average number associated to the numerical properties. So for instance, in the first use case scenario, can we extract a number out of 10 pixels?
Yeah.
Yes, number 10, right?
Yes.
Can we extract a number out of the word block?
No.
No. Can we get a number out of 20 pixels?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, so eventually we got 10 and 20, which average is obviously 15, yeah? So that's pretty much the idea. What I like about intermediate questions is there are many different ways of solving the same problem. And I think we all will become much better developers if we move away the comfort zone, if we try different techniques, different approaches, if we compare our coding style against our colleagues, I think you'll become more resilient towards problem solving. All right, so first of
Ricardo,
all,
maybe,
yeah.
Ricardo, sorry, maybe you might, this is also the right moment to remember to people, and particularly to new joiner, that once the challenge is done, you can go and read other people's solution.
Fantastic, indeed.
Which is a very, very good learning opportunity. That is where you really learn a lot, I think.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great. Indeed, Giacomo. So he's right. So after the challenge, you can revisit the questions and you can compare your code, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, against your colleague. Yeah. Something I will strongly recommend you to do is, apart from comparing your code against other players, try to have a look to people who failed. People who from 6 feet distance, you believe the answer was right, but it wasn't. And you will see that because the answer will become red. And try to figure out, hey, why this code is not working? Because that's a classic use case scenario in your daily life, right? You'll have to find algorithms that were written by someone else, and they were probably working 6 months ago, but they are not working anymore, right? So coding is not just about building stuff. It's also about maintaining, fixing others' code. All right, so get average pixels. So I'm gonna pass an argument called, I don't know, CSS rules object. You'll see I used to, in many occasions, try to describe the data type. I mean, we are not using TypeScript here, so in this occasion may not be a problem, but in other scenarios, it's very easy to mess around strings and numbers, and so we should definitely try to control our data. And then what? Well, first of all, look, I'll tell you my technique. My technique is going to be based on 2 steps. On the first step, I'm going to get the array with the numerical values. In other words, let's try to focus on the first use case scenario. The array is going to look something like that, 10 and 20. Yep. And now, once I got that array, I will get the average. So you see, I'm dividing a big problem into 2 smaller parts. Why? Because then if I fail, I could do divide and conquer. Yeah, I could check, did I fail on the first step or did I fail on the second step? Yeah? So that way of breaking down problems will help us in order to debug potential problems. Yeah? All right, so let me create a variable called numerical values. And now I'm gonna try to get the numerical values out of that object. So first of all, I have to iterate over all the CSS values. So guys, can anyone help me here? Which method in JavaScript can help me to go through all the values of an object?
Object.values?
Object.values. That's correct. Object.values. Yeah. By the way, object.values, it seems something quite fundamental. But for instance, I think it was introduced in Node.js in 2017. So if you ever work with Node and you cannot use object.values and you say, why the hell I cannot use object.values, make sure you update Node. Yeah, don't use a very old version. All right, so object.values, and then I have the CSS rules object. And that will give me an array with the values, 10 pixels, block, and 20 pixels. So now I wanna first of all try to get the numbers. So let me try to use map. Because with map, I can, for each value, I can transform 10 pixels into a proper number that will be 10. So guys, can you tell me, and there are so many valid answers here, but can you tell me a pragmatic way of transforming 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 75 pixels into 10, 20, 75?
Using parseInt.
Using parseInt, that's correct. Using parseInt. So here we can type parseInt value, yeah, and that will hopefully give me an array of what? Well, on the first use case scenario, we got first of all 10. Can anyone tell me what parseInt of the string block will return?
Not a number.
Not a number, that's correct, because we cannot get any number out of the string word. Yeah, and of course eventually we'll get number 20. Yeah, so that's what we got so far. And because we are going to run some math operations, I'm going to filter out my data. I want to keep just the numbers. So can anyone tell me how can I, out of a list of elements, how can I get just a subset?
With filter.
Filter, that's correct. With filter, now I want to keep the numbers. And again, there are different ways we can get the proper numbers. One of the classic approaches is to use is not a number. Yeah. So is not a number, is not a number, will return true if the value is not a number. Is that what we want?
No.
No.
Need to negate it.
That's correct. We need to negate it because we want on the other way around. Please keep the values that are not a number. Not a number means it's a number, right? That's a bit mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
It may take a year to explain that to my mom, but anyway, that's the way it works, right? So, all right. So
Ricardo, another mind-blowing fact, well, partially mind-blowing. If you use modern JavaScript, it will be also better to use number dot is none instead of just
number dot is none. Correct.
There is
correct.
a slightly different behavior, but nobody ever remembers and so on. But again, in case you're in an interview with me, if you have a tiny bit of extra time anyway, I have a very, very tricky question for this problem. Tell me later.
Cool.
If you wish.
Cool, fantastic. That's great. That's great. Thanks, Giacomo, for your point. So, guys, there is another question for you tonight. So, what's the difference between is not a number, which is classic, that has been there since the 90s, and the new and shiny number dot is not a number? Yeah. What's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you something else. Can I use here instead of parsing? Can I use number?
No.
No.
Why not?
Because we need to, otherwise if we use number, it wouldn't work because we've got PX. So we pass int allows us to pass strings.
Correct. That's correct. Guys, if our string will look something like that, 8, then we can either use parse int or number. Yeah, both approaches will return the same. Yeah, so that's fine. However, do you have any preference between parse int and number? Number. Why?
It's more efficient.
It's more efficient. That's right. That's actually right, Elena. So the thing with parsing, I think developers abuse parse int. Parse int works great when it works great, but we shouldn't abuse. You remember what Giacomo said before about the ternary operator, which is great, but be careful with it. So pretty much the same thing with parsing. Parsing is very smart. It's very smart. If you give a number, if you give expression containing a number, it will do its best trying to figure out where the hell the number is within that expression. So for instance, if you pass 8 pixels, parse int will do well. Be careful, because if the number is not at the beginning, that's not going to work. But you know, in some scenarios where you have control on your data and you know that the number will be in front of the expression, you know, parsing may work. However, if you are playing with strings as numbers, there is no point of using parse int, because it is so smart that obviously doesn't come for free. Yeah, parse int is slower, much slower than number. Yeah, there are some benchmarks on the internet you can check later on just to prove that theory. Yeah, so don't use parse int. Don't use parse int unless you have a good reason. And here we have a good reason, so we'll use it. Yeah, cool. All right. So if my approach was right, now numerical values will be an array of numbers. So you know, now I just need to get the average, yeah, which is going to be a piece of cake, hopefully. So I'm going to use, guys, how do you get the average of a list of numbers?
With the
reduce.
With reducement.
Reduce, correct. So you know, there are different ways to do that, right? So we can, for instance, get the total and then dividing the total by the number of elements, classic. Or you can do something probably slightly smarter, which is doing everything in one line, yeah? So in other words, if you get numbers 1, 2, and 3, the average is 2, right? And how do we do the average is 2? Because we can either do 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, and then, not 7, not 66, and then we can divide 6 by the number of elements, which we got 3 numbers, 6 divided by 3 equals 2, right? Easy, no problem at all. However, you can also do something slightly different. So what you can do is, you can do 1/3 plus 2/3 plus 3/3. Yeah, that's the same. Yeah. So each number divided by the number of numbers, the number of values. Yeah. So 1/3 plus 2/3 plus 6 plus 3/3. It is obviously again 6/3, which is 2. Yeah. So that, I would like to follow that technique today. And now, so can you guys give me a decent variable name, decent argument name for the reduce?
Average.
Total.
Accumulator.
Accumulator. I'm going to disagree with Giacomo. Why the first time today? I'm probably not by the last time.
And one of very rare in since we know each other. Yeah. I write it the same. I write it ACC. Yeah.
So the reason why I'm not a big fan of calling it accumulator is accumulator describes, you know, the idea behind that argument, which is fine. That's an accumulator. Of course, it's an accumulator. However, to me, it plays against semantics. So me personally, and this is not based on any standard, so you don't have to trust me here, right? This is just based on my personal touch. Based on my personal way of coding, I prefer to improve the semantics by telling my colleagues the nature of the data that variable holds. And in this particular case, because I want to get the average, I'm going to call it average. So my accumulator is going to be called average. But that's the accumulator, of course, right? And what about the second argument, guys?
Value or number?
Value or values?
Number.
Singular or plural or numbers?
No, singular. Number singular.
Number.
Because we iterate it needs.
Because we're thinking of numbers. So.
I mostly agree on that. However,
Anyway, if you want to be picky, while you're reducing, that is not the average yet. That will be the total. Just my friend.
Yeah, I will put as well total.
We'll see, Giacomo. We'll see. That's not what I have in my mind, right? Because if we got 1/3, that's gonna be the average, the partial average, not the total. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, that's fine. I think it's a very healthy discussion, right? I love this discussion. So, however, let me tell you something. I'm not a big fan of calling that number. The reason is, it is a number. Absolutely, it's a number. However, look, again, guys, that's a classic problem with junior developers. You keep changing the semantics again. And you have a variable called value, and then you rename it to number, and then you rename it to X. And then, guys, please stick to something. I don't care if you're wrong, but please be consistently wrong, right? So look, here we call it numerical values, right? So I don't see the point of renaming that to number. It's a subtle detail, but you know, if you start messing with the semantics in this problem, you know, this is going to be a snowball. The problem is going to be much worse later. So I don't care if you call it numerical value or simply value for simplicity reasons, right? Let's try to keep it simple. All right. So, and then based on that, what we need to do is return what? So we got the average, the partial average, plus value divided by what?
Numerical values.
Dot length.
That's correct. Numerical values dot length. Yeah. Is this gonna work?
We need to set the average, like initialize the average to probably 0.
That's correct, Lauren. We have to initialize the accumulator, because if we don't initialize the accumulator, that algorithm is not gonna calculate the average correctly.
We'll store the first element as accumulator.
That's correct, Vicky. If we don't set any default value for the accumulator, can anyone tell me, on the first use case scenario, what's gonna be the first value of the average?
20, won't it? Because it's not going to take into account 10.
Yeah.
It will be
sure?
10. It will be 10.
It's gonna be 10. That's
10.
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Because that's correct. You see, if the first value of the average is 10, you can easily smell that this is not gonna work, right? So we definitely need a default value if we want to follow this approach. Yeah. And then, yeah, I think that should work. So following what Giacomo suggested, because that's not purely the average, that's some sort of partial average, I'm gonna rename it so to avoid any confusion. And then
I mean, I will just drop that approach because you are just doing like double the amount of operation. But if you really want to insist for a point of pride, what can I say?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, here we are dividing on each iteration. If we get the total first, then we divide just once. You know, dividing is expensive compared to other math operations. You know, fine. Of course, I don't disagree on that. Yeah, I don't disagree on that. Look,
it's fine, but it's never used.
Typo.
Oh, it's a typo
Ah,
on line 2.
It says rules
Yeah.
object, yeah. And then, look at that. Now it doesn't work. So, yeah, Vicky,
Can I
you know why?
something else? With the reduce method.
Yeah.
So instead of if we remove the return numerical values and we continue dot reduce.
If we remove numerical values and we do what?
If we continue.
I see what you mean.
I want to put like
everything in one expression. All right. That's very interesting. Vicky, let me do something.
Okay.
Let's first of all solve this problem, and then yes, we can refactor, because I think that's a very good point. How can we essentially follow in, different coding style? How can we do everything in one operation? So that's not working. So can anyone see what the problem is, by the way?
We have put the number there. We have leave the number on top there. No.
I don't know what you're talking about, Vicky. I'm afraid.
Number of the dot map. No, it's fine. It's fine. No.
Guys, let's do something. You see, that's a scenario I wanted to present. Does it work? No, it doesn't. And when you get an error in the console, like variable Brexit doesn't exist. Oh God, you forgot there is a typo somewhere. Easy. But that's, to me, probably the worst use case scenario, or one of the worst use case scenarios, because it doesn't work. We don't know why. We cannot debug it. It's challenging, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sacrifice some accuracy, and I'm going to, breaking the problem in 2 parts. Is the array of numerical values right? If it's right, that means the problem is here. If it's wrong, that means the problem is there. Yeah. So I'm dividing the problem into 2 parts. So let's see if numerical values is right or wrong. You see, here is the problem. Numerical values is wrong. So we have to figure out why. Can anyone see? Guys, the problem is in these 3 lines.
We should just,
Yeah.
%.
Correct. Do you remember, guys, we got %, and for testing purposes, I changed it back to number.
Yeah.
And then obviously that wasn't one.
I mean, to say, but I was like, oh, maybe it's fine as it was.
Guys, I'll tell you something. If it worked using number, I will switch off my computer and I will go back to Spain to have some deserved holidays, right? Because that's never gonna work with number.
Number below, instead of is not none, it will work if we just put the number there.
So you want to change the order? You want to filter first and then map? I think that's
fine.
That's very romantic, Vicky, but that's not going to work because it's not a number of 10 pixels. I mean, that's going to return false all the time, right? So we first of all need to transform everything into a number, and then we need to do our best.
I was saying to put the number method instead of the is none. There.
You want but wait a minute. Number that transforms
without exclamation mark.
No. That doesn't make sense because you got a number. Value is a number already, so that operation is actually pointless because you got a number, and you transform it into a number when it's a number. So that's not gonna work, Vicky. We need to use is not a number. All right.
Ricardo?
Yeah, go for it, Elena.
Could we have used remove the map and just filter by saying value is value equal? Adding in the filter section, just keep the number. So if value is equal.
Value is equal to what?
If parse int value is equal.
Parse int.
I think
value and
parse int value
is equal.
What? Equal to what?
Yeah, that. So if it's
parsing, no, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Guys, careful. Is not a number, is gonna return a Boolean, true or false. So that doesn't make sense. That's all right. Okay, cool. Before, I think Vicky was asking something very interesting. She was asking, can we get rid of the numerical values property, and can we do everything? So can I just return? Guys, I told you a few things already, but if you go to a job interview and they present you an algorithm and the first thing you type is return, you're putting your balls on top of the table, right? Because you're proving like you really know what you are gonna do, right? You may miserably fail, but the first impression is positive. So return object values, we transform, so we get the numerical values, and then we reduce, right? So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. However, is that gonna work?
No, we have to, if we put on dot reduce inside, we put more values like if we put index and array, and then on the return, we have like the accumulator plus,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
that's
the array dot length.
That's right, Vicky. Look, guys, how can we get the total size of the array? We don't know, right? How do we know that? We don't know. We've lost that.
So
We've lost that variable. However, as Vicky said, when you use reduce, you can pass multiple arguments.
Yeah.
So on top of the accumulator and each individual element, what's the third argument of reduce, guys? Can anyone tell me?
Array.
Index.
Is the index. We first get the index, and then
Array.
we got the array. Yeah. Let me call the array numerical values, trying to improve the semantics.
Okay.
Yeah. So then if you run it, boom, look, that's pretty cool, right?
Mhm.
So map, then filter, then reduce, you know, that's quite cool. Is there a way to improve this algorithm, guys?
Going back to Elena's point, sorry. So, you know, on the filter, instead of doing like the triple equals, could you not do inside the parentheses on line 4? So
Yep.
put parse in and then wrap value. So within, yeah. So after is not a number.
Parse in
It's-
value.
Yeah.
wait
And then
a
copy that and then put it into where we've got value. And
Before.
inside the parentheses where it's not a number.
That's interesting. So now you want to get rid of map.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes sense, but I don't think that's gonna work. The reason is, yes, that's gonna keep the right elements. However, so I'll tell you what that's gonna return, Lauren. So that's gonna return an array of, look, 10 pixel, 20 pixel.
Oh yeah.
So we managed to filter out the data correctly. However, we don't get numbers anymore. Yeah.
Because it's
So
a
that's why.
Boolean, so-
Exactly. So that's
Yeah.
why that's not gonna work. I mean, I'm sure we could combine. I know you don't like to do map and filter, but I know that we could actually get rid of the problem by using reduce and then a condition. So we could do that, right? There are many ways we can solve the problem. But I find that approach is quite educational, yeah, because you can see different array methods. Guys, can we simplify that? Is there a way to get rid of the return statement and things like that?
Remove the curly braces. So
Correct. So if we remove the curly braces, let's put a parenthesis, yeah, to let our code breathe a bit. Something like that. Is that going to work?
No, you need to remove the semicolon.
You need to remove the semicolon. That's
I
correct.
did,
Yeah?
yeah.
Without the semicolon, and now hopefully it works. Any thoughts, Giacomo, for instance?
Oh, I was waiting for my minute. There is a tricky question, but well, two questions. Let's start with a simple one. If anybody knows what is the difference between parseInt and unary plus, but because they work pretty similarly. So instead of parseInt, you put a plus in front of it. But to think about it, remember that in map you can also pass directly a function. This is a typical, let's say, intermediate question. What happens if you remove what is inside the map and you just write a parseInt?
That's a really good question. So
I think you know this one, yeah?
Yeah. So there are two questions here, right? I mean, I'm sure the first one is guys will know the difference. But another homework question for you guys: what's the difference between parseInt x versus number x versus plus x? Yeah. You can get the same result depending on the circumstances. What's the difference?
Something with the negative. It has to do something with negative.
With the negative, no, wait, I'm not going to go that far. I'll leave the question there. So Giacomo has exposed that question. And then the second question.
We'll just say to you.
Say it again, Giacomo?
No, I would, like in a quiz when you make a
yeah. Wrong.
Yeah.
True. All right. The second question is really, really good, actually. It's really good. So what Giacomo is suggesting is, guys, when you got an array of strings, So I don't know why, but I was waiting for that question for Giacomo. I think I invited Giacomo to this session just because of that question, right? All right. So
you met me years ago just expecting this precise moment. So.
Exactly. You know, guys, when you got an array of numbers represented by a string, so if you got pure numbers like 4 and then 6 and then 1, and you want to transform that into an array of pure numbers, you want to get 4, 6, and 1. Imagine that I got a variable called let values equals that. Yeah. Of course, you know, we can do values dot map, and then for each number, for each value, yeah. Remember, if you call it values in plural, then don't call it number, guys. Don't call it Brad Pitt. Just keep consistency in the semantic. Yeah, you call it value, then you can do number of value. Yeah, you can do that. That's fine. Technically speaking, that's a correct way. So then you can have another variable, let whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but you get the point. Then what Giacomo is suggesting is, if you get that, in reality, rather than getting the argument on the arrow function and then calling your function again with the same argument, we can simplify the logic by doing that, right? That's fine. That works. However, is that gonna work when talking about parse int? In other words, can I actually do that? Let's run it and see if it works. That's not gonna work.
Well, technically you can do it and it's not a syntax error, but...
Correct, but that's not gonna do what you may expect, right? So that's correct. That's not gonna throw any error. The strategy is correct. You reference, you bind the function, and then it's been called by JavaScript. That's fine. However, you return 10. Why the hell? That's even worse than getting an error, right? Because if it gets an error, you can go through it. But when it returns something close but not correct, so the problem here, unless Giacomo wants to explain that, is that parseInt.
It's the second parameter.
Is it,
correct. Go for it, guys. Go for it.
Yeah, well, I would just suggest the documentation is your friend. So if you get stuck and you wonder what happens, I will go to MDN and look at the documentation of parseInt, the documentation of map, and maybe I start to see something.
All right. So Giacomo doesn't want to spoil the answer. There was
it's the second parameter. It doesn't take it as a decimal number. It takes it as the second parameter passed in to the parseInt.
Yeah, that's correct. So don't forget, guys, that when you use map and then you call a function, that means that any potential argument associated to map, and there are a few arguments when using map, right? So what's the first argument on map? Is the value or the number, whatever. What's the second one, guys?
Index.
That's the index, right? That's the index. There are others, right? At least one more. But for now, to simplify things, map deals with a couple of arguments. So if you got map and then you call parseInt, that code it's equivalent to the following one: map value index parseInt value index. To simplify things, again, there are more arguments here, but I don't want to talk about them, right? So hopefully that will help a bit to realize where the problem is. parseInt expects a second argument. Can you tell me, does anyone know what's the name of this argument?
It's like an object.
No, wrong.
Base.
It's the base, correct, or the radix.
Okay.
Yeah. What that means, you know, guys, that when we talk about numbers, we used to think on a base 10, right? Number 5, I got 5 caramels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But in reality, when talking about maths, there are different bases, right? So for instance, does anyone know what parseInt f in base 16 will return?
I was gonna say 15, but no.
That's correct, Elena. That's correct. That's gonna return. Yeah, that's correct. Why? Because in hexadecimal, base 16 numbers, we start 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then what?
A, B, C, D.
Correct. If you know, guys, you remember CSS? background color A, B, B, C, C. That's hexadecimal, right? A, B, C, D, E, F. So in reality, look, 1, 2, 3, F is the last one, right? So that's the 15. 0, 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then eventually 15. Yeah. So that's the reason why, and that's actually a really, 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 really good point. We cannot use sparse int that easily in this exercise. Anything else, folks?
Could we, on the filter then, with that being said, could we just drop the filter down to negate is not a number, or does it not work?
So you want to do that?
Yeah, just out of interest. I don't know if it works or not. I'm just wondering how it works in comparison to map, because I know obviously it didn't work with parseInt with map, but if that's something that can be done with map, I don't know if it's something
I could be surprised if that will work, because you are binding with a function and you are negating the binding. That's a bit blowing to me. No, that's not gonna work. If guys,
no, I was just wondering.
No, listen. If we were looking for the non-numerical values, then of course, then that binding could be perfect. Yeah. If we were looking for display block, visibility hidden, this sort of CSS properties, that will work. Yeah. But because we want the opposite, I don't think you can do that, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Anything else, guys? Giacomo, anything else from your side?
I think we milk this problem enough. Let's look at something else.
Fantastic. I completely agree. Guys, we got 7 minutes before presenting the results. That's a pity, right? Because we're going to run out of time. However, let's quickly go through that problem. Let me show you. I'm going to solve the problem so it passes, but Giacomo is going to complain massively about what I'm going to do now. So look. Add multiple, that's an array of what? Of musicians, maybe, right? So let's try to keep some quality standards on the semantics, musicians. And then I'm going to add a musician in a particular index. Fine. So then what I'm going to do is musicians.splice. You know, with a splice, you can alter arrays. So the first argument is which index do you want to play with? So that's the index. The second argument is how many elements? Correct, Max. How many you want to remove? I don't want to remove any, right? I just want to add. And then you can pass a comma-separated list of elements you want to add in that position, ignoring the ones that have been removed, something like that, yeah? Because we are not removing anything. The only thing we need to do here is pass the musician. So let me do something wrong, first of all, yeah? Something like that. I want to return something like that. If I want to add, if I want to remove, I need a few arguments. So for instance, I need, again, the list of musicians. And then I need the index I want to start removing. And then how many elements, how many do I want to remove? Yeah. I'm sure you got the better variable name, but you know. All right. So then what? Then I need to do something similar, right? So return musicians dot splice, and this is pretty much the same thing, right? So in which index do I want to play? In the index, right? So take that index as a starting point, and now I would like to remove X. Yeah. So what it will do, guys? For instance, let's pay attention to the last assertion: Mozart, Pachelbel, Chopin, and Holst. So go to index 1. We're here, right? Go to index 1 and remove 2. So it will remove this one and the next one. So what we will get back is Mozart and Holst. Yeah? That's the idea. But now, before talking about patterns and anti-patterns, is that going to work?
No, because of the return. So I feel like because we're kind of modifying, we're not actually modifying the array, we're kind of creating a new version of the array. So we'd need to do the splice and then return musicians afterwards.
That's right, Lauren. Look, splice is very powerful, but it's a bit tricky sometimes. Yeah, splice, careful here, returns the list of removed elements. That's a bit controversial. Personally, I believe that's a bit controversial, but that's the way it works, right? Look, in the first use case scenario, it returns an empty array because we remove nothing. Same thing on the second use case scenario. And then look, because on the third use case scenario, we remove everything, it will be returning a new array, right? That's not what we want to do. However, we can work around the problem by, first of all, splicing the array and then return it, yeah? So first of all, you splice the array and then you return it. And if you do that, then technically speaking, that is correct. But now, because I'm sure Giacomo wants to participate, right? So that's gonna have many caveats, yeah? So first of all, the function receives an array of musicians. We shouldn't, unless there is a good reason, we shouldn't alter the array we receive. This is like, I mentioned the same example many times. When you go on holidays to a different country and a friend of you is visiting London and you let him or her your keys, so he or she can stay in your place. Once you go back from holidays, you don't want to see different colors in your walls. You don't want to see different furniture, different TV, right? You leave your keys to someone. The condition is implicit, but it's obvious. Do whatever you want, but don't change anything, right? Leave everything as it is, right? So that's pretty much the same idea. Here, we're creating an impure function. And it's an impure function because it has an input, a list of musicians. Look, in the first use case scenario, we receive 2 musicians. And then after calling the function, suddenly, we have 3 musicians because the array is obviously passed by reference. Yeah. So whatever we do on the array is gonna persist. So we should be careful with these things. Yeah. React is, for instance, is very strict. It's very strict when talking about hooks. It's very strict with the way we can mutate the data and the way we cannot mutate the data. So my proposal here is, rather than modifying the original array, let's copy it. Let's create a new array. And then because the new array is ours, we can do whatever we want with it, right? So let me do something. Let me create a new array, new musicians. And then can I do something like that? Can I create a new array and then, can I do that?
No.
That's the same problem, because now we are creating a new reference to the same address in memory, right? So we are still modifying the original array. However, in JavaScript, that's another classic job interview questions. I'm sure Giacomo has asked that so many times. So how can you copy an array, right? As always, it depends on what type of array are you dealing with, right? In this particular case, if we are strictly speaking talking about an array of strings, so there is nothing weird, no objects or nothing, complex, just an array of strings, fine. There are many different ways you can do it. Let me show you one of them, which is using the rest parameter. Yeah. So if you use the rest parameter here, you are spreading the values of the array into a comma-separated list of strings. And of course, because we still want to have an array, we can then wrap that comma-separated list of values into another array. So now, new musicians is going to be a new array. So we can do whatever we want on that array that is not going to touch the original input. Yeah. If I test it, still works. And then look, if I add a console.log, just for testing purposes, console.log of musicians, first of all, and then new musicians. If I run that, look, you see, guys, after splicing, the array of musicians remains with 2 elements. We haven't touched it. However, the new array of musicians, which is under our control because we have created, it has a different number of elements, and that's fine. Any thoughts?
I think at this point I will ask for the candidate to do something even more functional. And my solution now should, well, not now, after a while should be visible also to other people. It's time over. I submitted this one. I don't know if you can look at it already. Anyway, in my solution, I just use a slice and concat. So that might be
fantastic.
Not slice. So that would be
slice,
something to consider.
Of course. My only argument, personal argument against Concat, Giacomo, is performance, because Concat, I believe, is slower than REST, and obviously here is not going to make any difference, right? Say it again. And
push is first.
Push is first. That's correct. Yeah, push is definitely more performant than the other two. Yeah. So
on average, because with push you might also cause a reallocation of the array if you really go under the hood, if you want to look into that. But anyway, when you interview, usually you might understand that quickly if a person in front of you is a Taliban of functional programming, which will also sacrifice his own first for it, or. So performance is another major thing or no?
Yeah, sorry, Giacomo, I think we are losing you. The weather is not helping, I believe. But yes, a final question. Giacomo, what do you think about these people? So what's your attitude towards them when you came across a developer who is sacrificing readability all the time because he wants to build something absolutely performant, even if he wants to build an array of fruits? So what are your thoughts about this sort of profiles?
It really depends. So first of all, as Gistra was suggesting, premature optimization is the root of all evil.
Evil, yeah.
So instead of trying to do something super performing and then it doesn't really make a difference because in your project, in your company, maybe it's a bit of code which is going to be run twice a day. And maybe you lost like, I don't know, 2 weeks to make it super performing. You should also consider that. And it looks like a joke, but it happens much more often than you might think. So you should also put an effort which is proportional to the benefit that you're going to get out of it.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Improvement should make sense of it. And there is usually, people say there is a trade-off in terms of readability and performances. I think up to a given point. Usually good code should be something which is also pretty readable. You should never go for hacks just for the sake of hacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Most 90% of the cases you can get the same performances, maybe even better, without hacks. So there is also that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Giacomo. Yeah, I've seen so many times, guys, people running so many hacks to sort an array of 3 fruits. Like, hey, you have to sort apple, banana, and orange, right? Yeah, potentially, if we had to sort 3 million fruits, fair enough. But if we know the scope of our platform, that is about sorting lists of 3 fruits, this is about engineering versus over-engineering. Yeah, or as Giacomo said, premature optimization is the root of all evil. All right, guys, I think we are out of time. I hope you had as much fun as I had. So it's time to check the results of the challenge, right? So what we got today, let me move things around. So I'm gonna check past challenges. Oh, that's cool. Oh, we got quite a lot of people today. That's brilliant. So first of all, let's present the results on lower beginner. As Giacomo said before, guys, now you can go back to the challenges view. And if you click on the challenge again, obviously you are not gonna be able to play with the challenge because the challenge is over. However, if you click on that icon, check in detail analysis, you'll be able to see everybody's code side by side. And I think that's pretty useful in order to learn different coding patterns, techniques, and so on. I mean, when talking about beginners, it is sometimes hard to spot big differences. However, the more complex the algorithm is, the easier to bring different approaches is as well, right? All right, so let's first of all have a look to the lower beginner. What you can see here is the result of inlining every single player who has participated in the challenge based on a bunch of metrics. That's what we call the PPP, Players Pentagon Performance. So here you can see, for instance, tenacity, how many questions you completed, accuracy, which means how many times you submit and you fail, speed, how long it took you to complete the challenge, focus, how many times you went to Google or to Stack Overflow to get help, and last but not least, elegance, how standard your snippets are. All right, so let's present the results distributed by teams. So we got the Shark Lovers team versus the Octopus Lovers team. So what's the median score of the Shark Lovers team? It's 90. That's quite good. That's fantastic. And on the right-hand side, the average, the median score of the Octopus team is 75. So that's 1 point for Team Shark. What else? Upper beginner. That's the first one we've managed to deal with today. So what we got today here, let's have a look. So team results. Oh, look, many developers choose the Octopus team. Don't ask me why. So on the left-hand side, we got Aisha getting 87 points. That's quite good, actually. And then, oh, look at that. So 89 points for Team Octopus, right? You see, there is a classic battle between Babik and Giacomo to get the victory in these sessions, right? So there's a new edition. I love that, guys. All right, what about the upper intermediate? That's the one we partially solved. That's quite good, actually. So you can see that, you know, some developers managed to get a good score. And now let's have a look to the team results. Actually, you know, that's gonna be easy, right? So no one, because I'll tell you something, because no one has played on the Shark team. Let me present the individual results to see who got the victory here. So let me jump to the points. So first of all, 47 points for Jesus, 55 points for Giacomo. How is Giacomo playing? I mean, he was participating in the session. I don't know how he can do two things at the same time. Anyway, 2 points for Maximilian. So not 2 points. Second place, runner-up, 87 points. And that means that Babik, look, Babik is on fire. Second victory for him today. And then what about the React? So let's quickly go through the React results before we call it a day. So let's have a look to the scores. This is the lower beginner. So Babik playing on the left-hand side. And his team got 88 points. And then on the right-hand side, oh, look, 83 points for Team Octopus. Yeah, that was a nice battle. On the upper beginner, you see things getting a bit more complicated, of course. So let's reveal the results. So in this occasion, actually, let me again present the individual results. So first of all, 15 points for a guest player, 45 points for another guest player. Gabs got 55 points, Babik 95, and look, first victory of the day for Giacomo, almost perfect, 99 points for him today. And finally, the upper intermediate, arguably the most complicated challenge we've run today. Look, guys, how beautiful this battle is. I have no idea who's been playing here yet, but look at how close the results are. Who do you think is the winner? It's hard to tell, right? Visually speaking, it's hard to tell. The score's going to be very, very, very close. So let's see who we got here. So first of all, look at that. Giacomo 89.2 and then Babik 90 points. This is so close. Brilliant, guys. That was a great fun.
Jealous.
I can't believe Giacomo how you end up getting 89 points on upper intermediate if you've been participating in the pairing session. But you know, that's just fantastic. Guys, today
I am a multi-threaded.
Nice. Giacomo doing multitasking has done something great, and Babik as well, of course. Guys, take this as an opportunity because now you can compare your code, regardless of whether you found the answer or not. You can get some references. Yeah. So now you can get back to the details view and you can see what these senior guys did. You can see what Giacomo did on each track. You can see what Babik did. And this is extremely helpful because that will show you different ways, different techniques about solving the problems. You don't necessarily have to agree with everything, but this is definitely a very, very valuable source of information. Apart from that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the session in this rainy evening. I really appreciate your help of everybody from the first to the last. Thank you very much, not just to the Kodri people, but also to the external guests, starting for Giacomo, of course. I know your time is very valuable. And apart from that, that's pretty much it from our side. So I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you again to Pusher for all your technical help. And have a lovely evening. Stay safe, and looking forward to see you in the next event. See you guys.
Ricardo.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Great.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.